featuring the creator and lead host of Clutch Crew Sports, Zach.
Unfortunately, Eric is an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, and he went through a pretty rough postseason watching my Portland Trailblazers pretty well dismantle his team. So,
dang. Okay, I did not realize we were going to go into that.
You sure you didn't lose your train of thought by looking at this picture here?
For those of you who don't know, Zach really likes Alex Morgan.
Featuring Nate, NFL and college football co-host. I don't think Indiana's very good, just being straight up, so I think it's pretty fair.
Indiana's getting triggered
cover
right now. You just triggered the whole state.
And I forgot to change on here.
Oh, okay.
But just here, I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna defend it.
Oh.
I do think Denver's a very average team. I'm gonna stick with my open pick.
What's up, everybody? We've got a fun episode ahead for you guys. We're going to be talking about college football this past weekend. We're going to talk about NFL in this past weekend. And more specifically within those, we're not really going to so much go as a game-by-game breakdown. But for college football, we're going to be discussing our new college football playoff rankings between myself and Nate. We're going to talk about the Tua injury. How does that impact Alabama's? How does that impact their chances for the playoffs, as well as what other teams are still alive for the college football playoffs? And then for the NFL, we're going to talk about some games this week, specifically some incidents that happened. And I've got a rant ahead. So no Eric on this episode, but I've still got a rant. And I see Eric just messaged me on Facebook, so he's like, I want to do it, really, man. That's probably what he's saying. That's perfect timing, really. And then we're also going to be talking about our playoff pretenders, contenders, who's eliminated, what teams can we eliminate, what teams do we think are pretty big locks, what teams maybe do we think are going to make the playoffs but lose in the first round. So that's what's in store for you guys in this episode. But I do quickly want to give a shout out to everybody who's followed our YouTube channel. As you can see here on the screen, if you're listening on YouTube, shout out to you. We do have 100 subscribers now. So, we started from the bottom, now we're here. Yeah, so thanks so much to all of you guys. Thank you to everybody who subscribed on iTunes as well. Anchor, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to this show. We really appreciate you subscribing to us. That's the whole point of the sub-members, to get our subscribers up, and we've been doing a great job with that. All four of us have now contributed to these to getting new subscribers, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm excited for December for the roast that whoever wins is going to get to do, but I will do a sub-member count here. So as you can see, Eric's still in first place at 28, so he's going to be pretty tough to catch. I've only got 13. Nate's got 5. Connor finally on the board with 1. It's looking like Eric's going to be roasting all of us, but there's still a chance for at least Nate and myself. But yeah, that's where that's at. So thank you guys. 100 subscribers is I think the first milestone for any YouTube channel, getting to 100. And it's just so cool that we've gotten here. Yeah, I still get kind of blown away just thinking about it. It's just been so great to interact with you guys, Aaron from Something Like a Podcast, whether it's playing Madden with our boy Jackson or Chris. We've had some really fun interactions with you guys. And we're not going away, so we're here to stay. Nate, it's been really cool getting to do this with you, man. Had a lot of fun with you guys. All of my co-hosts, you guys are all great. Really appreciate your guys' contributions and your time to this show. Definitely couldn't be here without you guys. So I want to give you guys a shout out as well.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
Fun doing these episodes every week, and
Yeah,
a great experience.
That's the thing. Like, this has got to be fun. Like, yeah, it's something like, it's like a job. Like, it takes a lot of time. Like, we spend many hours a week, like, planning episodes, recording and editing, all that stuff. But if it's, at the end of the day, if it's not fun, what are you really doing it for? So that's, I still have so much fun recording these, and I'm really excited to see how much bigger we can get. It's a small step here to get to 100, but I know we're capable of a lot more. So the challenge is on for the next big milestone of subscribers. And okay, sorry, I just wanted to see what Eric said real quick. So we'll get into the episode now. Like I said, we're going to be talking about college football. This was a good week for Nate, as far as his predictions go. You had told me before the podcast that this is your best week, you think, of all the times you've made predictions?
I think so. For sure, one of the best. Usually at or below 50%, and I think I was a couple games better than that this week, so wasn't too bad.
Yeah, certainly. Like, I didn't have a great week. I was under 50%. Connor was a little bit above 50%, but you definitely won the week. But you still got some ground to make up for the season totals. Let me go look down at that. So I did update this earlier today. I'm still in first place with 54% right. Connor's 2 games back from me at 53%, so still very close. You are going to be 8 games back from me at 50%. You're above 50%, but it's just the rounding puts at 50%, but you do have a winning record. But it's Connor definitely closed the gap with me this week, so I gotta pick better next week for sure. Yeah. I've had a lead all season, but this is the closest it's gotten in a while. So going back up here, let's look at some of the notable ones really that happened. I got Auburn wrong. That was such a frustrating game for me because Auburn almost came back and won that, or at least would have tied it. That was a really good game to watch. I don't know if you caught any of it, but that Auburn-Georgia game was probably the best of the weekend, if I want to say so. Or maybe Oklahoma-Baylor.
The Baylor-Oklahoma was pretty good. Yeah,
that was going on a little bit later. Or I was watching USF-Cincinnati, so I didn't see much of that game, but that was a crazy comeback for Oklahoma. But basically, I guess we'll talk about Tua first. Obviously, Tua got injured in this game. I think a hip injury, if I want to say so. Yeah, and he was carted off the field. This occurred in the second quarter when Bama was up 35-7, and the reports are that Nick Saban told Tua that he wasn't going to go out there and play, and then Tua begged him and I guess won that he wanted to go out for one more drive, and I guess Coach Saban finally caved in and let him, and then he took a tough hit on one of those plays, and that's when the injury occurred. And when I first saw this, like, I actually thought Tua shouldn't be playing in this game, let alone this far into the game when you have a 28-point lead and, you're Bama. Mississippi State's not going to come back on you. But I was surprised he even made the start. But it's unfortunate for college football that we're not going to have Tua for the end of the season. But so now it's Mac Jones's team, and it's going to be interesting to see how this injury impacts the college football playoff committee. Obviously, there's Alabama bias, but still, I think this injury guarantees that Bama doesn't make the playoff, because it's now completely out of the question for them to make to make the SEC championship game. So the only thing left for Alabama to do is beat Auburn, which they would obviously have to do. But assuming that they beat Auburn still, I just don't see how the committee is going to be putting in a Mac Jones-led team here, because you can't really factor in that earlier season for Alabama because they don't have Tua now. Like, unless Mac Jones beats Auburn by 45 points or something, I think then there's a chance. But I mean, he only put up 3 points in the second half against Mississippi State, 38-7. Tua scored 35 of those points when he was on offense. So I just don't have much faith in Mac Jones. But even if he does, I think the committee, that fourth team that they're going to be putting in, has got, if they aren't a conference champion and they have a loss, they have to be unequivocally good, from an eye test, so to say. And I don't think Bama's going to make that without Tua. I think that's going to factor into their decision. I think any one-loss team, assuming that their starting quarterback stays healthy, is going to make it over them, including Georgia, including Penn State, including Oregon, Utah is the most likely scenario, one of those teams, Oklahoma. I just think this is going to take Alabama completely out of it. I know Connor disagreed with me, but what are your thoughts on this, Nate?
I agree with you here. I just don't see a scenario where Alabama makes the college football playoff. They would have to have some freakish stuff happen to even be considered with their record. I think the SEC champion obviously will be in, whether that's LSU or if Georgia beats them in the SEC championship, then Georgia will be in. Probably. That's the only scenario, I guess, where it could be confusing. Maybe you can make the argument for Alabama being in if they win out and beat Auburn. But at the same time, if I'm the committee, I agree with you. I wouldn't put Alabama in the playoff, even in that scenario, just based off the eye test. They only put up 3 points against Mississippi State in the second half when they put up 35 in a quarter and a half with Tua, which that to me is pretty concerning, because even if you can't throw the ball that well, I know there's definitely a drop off in quarterback talent from Tua to Mac Jones, but you still should be able to run your offense. And if you're Alabama, you definitely need to be able to run the ball and do all that stuff. They should at least be able to put up 10, 14 points maybe in the second half, even if they didn't keep their foot on the gas pedal. So I think we'll see how they look versus Auburn, but I even if with a win in that game, I still don't see them being put in the playoff.
Yeah, and I also have serious doubts that that Alabama can even win that game. I think Auburn should be the favorite entering that game. So obviously if Alabama loses that, it's not even going to be a question. But I think just even beating Auburn is going to be tough for them now. They're going to be on the road. It's a place that they've traditionally lost a couple times before in recent memory. So I think there's a great chance that Auburn beats them head to head. But yeah, to me.
I would go.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would go that far. I think it still beat Auburn. It probably won't be a blowout like it would have been, but I don't think Auburn's they got a great defense, but I don't think their quarterback play is enough to beat Alabama. You really need a great quarterback to beat Alabama's defense, and Bo Nix has not been it this year. He threw he was 30 of 50 yesterday for 200 yards, which I don't think he's gonna get it done. But I agree with you, though. It's definitely going to be a lot harder than it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not to...
No, it's cool. I mean, this is a big story here. So
yeah.
But moving now into more college football playoff talk, because there was no major upsets this week, I think it's still safe to say that LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson are all going to be locks. We can debate the seeding when it comes closer to the time, but as far as just the 4 that are going to be in, I think those 3 are for sure going to make it. I think they can, other than Clemson, I think LSU can afford a loss to Georgia in the SEC championship. I think I think Ohio State can afford a loss somewhere along their remainder of their schedule. But so I think you're in agreement with me about those 3 teams, right?
That's kind of who I think will make it as well. Just
Yeah.
Based on all the conference championships and stuff, the way things are shaping up.
Mm-hmm.
One week
So
left in the season.
yeah, so it's really coming down to that 4th spot, and there's a couple contenders for that. But some teams I think that got eliminated this week from that, Minnesota, I think their loss eliminates them against Iowa. Now they're not even, I don't think, guaranteed to make the Big Ten championship. If they beat Wisconsin, so I mean, I just don't see them with this loss to Iowa. I think Minnesota's kind of fool's gold a little bit now. Like, we got real excited about them last week, and now they lost to Iowa. Not a great team, So I'm going to eliminate them. Same with Baylor, because that loss to Oklahoma was inexcusable in the way that they let Oklahoma come back. It was a home game for them too, so they had their chance and they blew it. And they really should have lost some games before that. They got some decent amount of luck to fall their way before that game. Georgia, I think, they control their fate, because if Georgia wins out, they should make the playoff. They would have wins against Florida, LSU, and Auburn, and Notre Dame too. Their only loss would be that South Carolina game, which was a bad loss, but still, I think all those big wins, that's a better resume than I think any other team can possess, especially with Auburn being a road game and then the other 2 being neutral site games. They really haven't. I guess the Notre Dame game was a home one, was a home game for them, but still, I think Georgia, they control their fate if they win out, and the committee's got them ranked 4th. So I think that's kind of proof that if they win out, they'll make it. But let's say LSU beats them. Who gets that 4th spot? If Georgia has 2 losses, Oregon, Utah, I think that's where most people are leaning towards, and I think most people think Oregon's the better team out of those 2, which would be cool. I would like to see either Oregon or Utah make it. I'd be cool with that. I think Oregon would be more deserving, though, since really their only loss came against Auburn back in like August, and it was like a 1-point loss on the last play of the game. Like, it was just kind of, that loss should not keep them out, especially if they win. If they win out, unless it's Georgia, I don't think anybody should be ranked above Oregon if they win out, because, I mean, you really can't fault them for that. At least they put a quality opponent on their non-conference schedule. I mean, Alabama certainly put nobody on their schedule that's even close to the type of team that Auburn would be. So to me, I think Oregon's also got a chance, but I think that Georgia makes it in over Oregon if Georgia wins out. And if Georgia loses but Utah wins, I think Utah makes it. So it's interesting. I don't think there's a chance for Oklahoma to make it still. Penn State, I guess there's a chance, but they have to win out, and then we'll see. But we're gonna know a lot more after next week. I'm just excited for this, man. I want to see who this fourth team is gonna be.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think for me, what it really comes down to for figuring out that fourth seed is gonna be the SEC championship game. To me, just depending on who loses between LSU and Georgia. I think if LSU beats Georgia, Georgia should be out of any playoff talk, and obviously LSU would be in. But if Georgia beats LSU, it could be a scenario like we had a couple years ago where Georgia and Alabama both made the playoff, where one, like, you can't leave out the SEC champion obviously, but at the same time LSU's look like the best team in the conference for the entire year. They've been number one at a few points, so it'd be hard for the committee to leave them out, I'm sure. So that would be a tricky scenario. But if LSU does beat Georgia, if I was the committee, I would put Oregon in if they do win out and win the conference, because it's been a few years since they put a Pac-12 team in the playoff, and it's not that the conference has been that strong, but I think it's kind of hard to kind of maintain credibility if you don't like factor them into the playoff discussion at all, because it's like, they are a Power 5 conference. They're probably the worst of the Power 5 conferences, but I think they definitely deserve to have their champion in the mix of all of it, especially with what you said. They've scheduled a tough non-conference opponent. That's really their only loss, or they have 2 losses, but that's their, if not their, with 1 loss, I think they're a much bigger kind of part of the playoff discussion right now. So I'm with you. I don't give them too much fault for the Auburn loss, but yeah, for me, that's who I would put at that 4th seed. I do think Oklahoma should be still in the discussion, especially if they went out convincingly the next couple games they have. But seeing them lose to Kansas State and seeing them almost lose to Baylor yesterday, the way they let them run out to that huge lead, that's also kind of concerning to me, that if they did make the playoff and they went up against LSU or Clemson, they could lose in a pretty ugly fashion. So
yeah,
that's what I think. Oklahoma, like, the resume is pretty close to being playoff worthy, but I think as far as the eye test goes, when they play well, when they don't play well, it's pretty ugly. So I think the committee also doesn't want to be put in a situation where they put a team in and then they get blown out by like 30 points, and then everyone, all the fans of the 5th and 6th ranked teams are at them all
yeah,
saying,
kind of like
why'd you put
last
them
year.
in? Yeah, like Notre Dame last year got destroyed, and all I forgot who the 5th team was last year, but all
It
the
was
fans
Georgia.
all the Georgia fans were upset, which I don't totally blame them. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think it's gonna be interesting. It's always an interesting thing watching all the scenarios that could play out. So should be a couple good weeks of football for us.
Yeah, certainly, man. I'm just excited to see how it turns out. And yeah, like you said, Oklahoma's not really passing my eye test because of their defense. Their offense is top tier, but that defense is not capable at all of stopping any of these other teams. Clemson, LSU, and Ohio State would all have field days against them.
Oh yeah.
So you got to be a complete team to make the playoff. But we'll move now to our NFL predictions. So you can see here, Nate did really well this week too. He had a bounce back. Did you listen to the last episode we had where we were making fun of you? Did you hear that?
Yeah. No, yeah. Listen, it was definitely pretty deserved though. I had an awful week. I think I got 1 game right all week. Got bit by a lot of those upsets, but I think this week weren't as many upsets around the NFL.
Yeah.
I think the only ones I got wrong, basically everyone else got wrong. It looked like the Carolina game, no one expected that, and then Jack's game looks like only Connor picked Indy, so don't feel too bad about that one.
Yeah, you didn't have a bad week for sure. I definitely did I still had a positive week, but
Yeah.
not as good as I would have liked, considering I'm trying to catch up to you guys. But so basically, we want to talk about some events that happened this past week, and then we'll talk more into the playoff picture for the AFC and NFC. But I guess starting off, we got to talk about the Thursday night game. Not the game, but we're going to talk about the end of the game. Myles Garret, obviously, if you haven't been on the internet, he ripped off Mason Rudolph's helmet and then used it as a club against his head. And luckily, he seemed to be okay after that. I don't know how, but nothing really. I don't think that much damage occurred, but still something I don't think this league has ever seen, where a player used another player's helmet as a weapon against them. I mean, there's been crazy instances of stuff happening, but I want to say that's a first. I could not find anything like that ever happening in the past. And then the next day, ended up getting suspended for the rest of the season. I just want to know, Nate, what are your thoughts about this? Like, to me, it was just such a crazy thing. Like, do you agree with the suspension? What do you think?
So I had, if you see on my Twitter account, Clutch Crew Nate, I had some takes right when it happened. I was also pretty fired up. Like, I had turned the game off by that point because I had the Steelers defense in fantasy, and I was just frustrated with how bad they were playing. But I turned it back on. I saw that clip, and I was pretty upset about Myles Garret doing that. I mean, up until this point, it seemed like a pretty cool guy. All this stuff, on his Twitter account, seemed pretty positive. And then to go and do something like that really, I mean, like Zach said, Mason Rudolph didn't get hurt at all, it seems like. But if you watch the video, he also didn't get a clean shot at him. He was kind of, being pushed around by the O-lineman a little bit. Like, if he had, I know Zach's showing this video. If you ever watch it on YouTube, you can see it. If he had hit him cleanly with the top part of the helmet, that could have been a devastating injury for Mason Rudolph. And to see something like that happen on live TV on the NFL is pretty shocking to me. So I'm in support of the penalty for Myles Garret. Seeing the other angle of the video at the start of the incident, I definitely think Mason Rudolph was at fault for starting it. The way it looked like he kicked Myles Garret, down where you shouldn't kick another man. And kind of looked like he was. Someone said he got his hand stuck in Myles Garrett's face mask. I don't know if I believe that. It looked like he was kind of trying to rip his helmet off also. So I think, I support the penalty for Myles Garret being suspended. Like, as a league, you have to do that to at least maintain your credibility, like what the NBA did with the Malice at the Palace incident a while back.
Yeah.
I think you got to get that suspension to Myles Garret. The suspension for Marquise Pouncey, I was supporting him for defending his quarterback, but at the same time, you also gotta, know that can come with a suspension. I think all that was pretty well deserved. I think Rudolph should have gotten at least maybe a game or at least some kind of fine for, I think, starting it. But all in all, kind of a tough situation for the league. And it's too bad it happened with the last 5 seconds of the game. If they could have played before, if they could have ran out the clock or something, then that wouldn't have happened, and we wouldn't be talking about it right now. But yeah, it was probably the most interesting thing that happened in the Thursday night game in a while, though. I will say that.
Definitely. I mean, that was a really chippy game too. From what I was watching, there was a couple of hits by Browns players that knocked out Steelers players. I mean, it was definitely very physical, very very emotional game, I think, for the Browns. But yeah, I mean,
like I agree with you about Rudolph starting it and everything, but it to me it's like you can't go that far. Like,
Right.
you're I mean, he could have killed him. Like that's
Yeah.
yeah, we're joking about it now. Like I was laughing about it when I saw it. Like because Rudolph was like being weird and stuff, going up and charging him. I was like, why would you do that? Like there was stupidity on both sides, but definitely Garrett could have made this. He could have been a lot worse. Which I guess is okay to laugh about because it wasn't as worse as it could have been. But yeah, just a crazy thing, like nothing I've ever seen before. And I like Myles Garrett too because I always play with him in Madden and Superstar KO, and he's like a beast in Madden. Like he gets off his blocks like instantly. He's a beast to have. But yeah, this not a good look though. And the crazy thing too is how like apparently a random fan like punched him in the face and he didn't respond at all. He didn't like retaliate or anything. So like I don't know what was going on in his head. Like what did Rudolph maybe say something, the unforgivable? But I don't know, like yeah, it looked from the video like he either kicked him or grabbed him in the nuts. But still like you can fight him, but when the helmet comes off, like you can't fight him, and you certainly can't use his own helmet to slam it into his head. Like that was just kind of crazy. But yeah, I think Rudolph should have got a suspension, and I agree with the suspension for Garrett for the rest of the season. I mean the league's all about making it safe for players, and that was definitely not a safe play. So you gotta send a strong message. And while I don't think this was ever on anybody's mind, I think certainly nobody's gonna do it again. So yeah, that's my take on it though. But I did see that you were fired up there when it happened with all those tweets and stuff.
Yeah, because I was kind of thinking the same thing like what you said. Like, Mason Rudolph could have gotten killed there. Like if it was a clean shot to his top of his head, like side of his head with the harder part of the helmet, like that could be a really messed up situation. Like watching an NFL quarterback get murdered, literally murdered on a
yeah. Well, if that had happened,
that's-
this would have been. I mean, who knows what would we still be playing the season? Like it might like things could have gotten way. I mean, if that had happened, sorry, I'm running in circles, but I would just be.
Yeah.
That would really be unprecedented. But but yeah, it's yeah. and I know you played football too. You never wanted to do that. Right?
There were some. Yeah, I mean, there were some fights, at we had a camp, like a team football camp over one of the summers, and there were definitely some, like, a couple fights, like, between our teams, some other teams, like, on other fields we saw, but, there's the standard, like, pushing, shoving, like, a couple punches thrown, but no one ever, like, took their helmet off and tried to, beat someone with it. Like, that's just craziness. So,
yeah.
That was pretty shocking behavior, to say the least.
Certainly. Yeah, so that happened there in that Thursday night game, and I did hint at a rant earlier, and I'm gonna get to it now. So this is for you, Eric. I'm sure you're gonna listen to this and agree with everything I'm gonna say, but and it just really stinks to be a Jags fan right now because it's just so frustrating when you know exactly what the other team is going to do, but you can't stop it. I mean, basically, for everybody that didn't watch this game, Indianapolis had 200 yards of rushing offense. Their yards per carry was just insane. I mean, it was all around bad. It was poor tackling, it was poor play calling, just everything was bad. I mean, this whole defense, like, they just got their ass beat. Like that's That's just basically what happened. I mean, they just shoved it down their throat. I mean, I'll credit Indianapolis for, you know, I think it's so underrated, their offensive line. I mean, when you talk about this offensive line, all the first round picks on it, all the talent that they put on it, I think the Giants regret passing on Quentin Nelson, because if you give me a choice, would you rather have Quentin Nelson or Saquon Barkley for your team? I would rather have Quentin Nelson, because the presence of him, not only as being one of the best offensive linemen I've ever watched in my life, you know, I'm sure there's been better offensive linemen, but for me personally, watching, in my experience of football watching, like, he's the best I've ever seen. Like, how can you not say that that's, you know, a star pick? Like, even though he's a guard, he makes the whole offensive line better. Like, it's just, and they were just able to do that. They just ran down the Jags' throat. Brissett really didn't do anything. Like, that's when Connor was like waiting to make his pick about, he thought he was going to pick the Jags if Hoyer started versus Brissett, and I was like, dude, like, I'm not worried at all about Brissett. Like, he's not even really a good quarterback, and it kind of showed. Like, he wasn't great. I mean, he did okay in some plays, but he never scared me at all. It was more like, okay, let's make Indianapolis have to pass the ball. Like, that was what we were wanting. We weren't wanting whatever running back it was to run. We just wanted them to have to pass it, because they weren't doing great. Obviously, no T.Y. Hilton. And then it was just a bad game, man. The offense, it looked good to start with, but the problem is I don't know why, but they only gave Fournette like 9 carries. They really, I think, overworked Foles here in this game. I think they were trying to, like, prove that, you know, that Foles is the man, because they were like, okay, let's give you 50 passing attempts. Like, you're usually not going to win when your quarterback has 50 passing attempts. So Foles didn't have a great game. Stinks because there were still a couple of pass interference calls that happened. There was one that got challenged where the defender was just grabbing on, I think it was Chark's jersey, and they upheld the call. Like, and I know the Ravens-Texans game had a worse incident of that, but still, this was bad. Like, I mean, how can you can clearly see that he's, you know, pulling him by the jersey. Like, there's no indisputableness here. Like, or there is indisputable evidence about that. Like, you know, you don't have to hypothesize, did he do that or not? Like, you can see the physical jersey moving off of his body. Like, I don't know. They just continue to get that call wrong every week. Lambeau missed a kick because the announcers jinxed him. Like, why do they need to say that every time he's kicking? Why do they need to say, oh, he's got a streak of 24 field goals in a row? Like, we all know that, so stop saying that. Like, to channel my Nick Saban, like, you know how he was like, I'm not gonna do it, so quit asking. Like, that's what they need to be like. They need to stop jinxing these kickers on those attempts. It was just a terrible game overall. Jags are probably they're gonna have to win out to make the playoffs at this point, and even that's gonna be, I don't even know if they win out, if they'll make it or not. But the division now looks a lot more. At least Houston lost, but still, I mean, this could have been our chance to really, you know, get back up into second place for the division. But just unfortunate, man. It's just hard to be a Jags fan sometimes, but I still believe in Foles. I'm not one of these people that's, you know, doubting Foles, but I think Marrone is. I mean, he punted the ball on 4th and 6 when there was 9 minutes left, and you were down like 31-7 or something. Like, I mean, I know it's highly unlikely, but you gotta at least go for it. Like, I don't know. I'm tired of Marrone. So Jags, hopefully they can beat Tennessee. That'd be really nice, but I'm not optimistic for the rest of the season now. I thought they could win this game. I really did, but guess not. So That's my rant on this. Eric probably could have done it better, but it's just frustrating, man. Like, God. But
Feel that.
basically, it comes down to, they had Quentin Nelson and we didn't. Like, I mean, it didn't matter the running back, man. They had holes so big, like, oh my God. it was just pathetic, the defensive approach to stopping the run. But so going back on the Quentin Nelson though, like, to me, like I was talking about how good he was. Like, I actually, like, when I was watching Indy on offense, like, I was actually watching him like more than I was watching the play, because he's more entertaining to watch than the play. Like, that to me, that's, which is crazy. Normally it's not, it's an offensive lineman, but to me, watching this Colts offensive line, specifically him, is more entertaining than watching the quarterback. So I guess, do you have any thoughts on this game, or you kind of in agreement with me about how the Jags just couldn't stop the run?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement. I didn't get to watch the whole game earlier, but I definitely saw most of the highlights. And yeah, they just got gashed, which was pretty surprising to me. We've got, I know their linebackers are pretty weak, besides Myles Jack. But they got a solid D line, and it's not really surprising they got gashed like that. And then the offense, I mean, the talent's there. I think the receivers are better than they have been in past years. Obviously, you got two quarterbacks that are better than what you've had in past years. So I think I'm with you. I blame a lot of this on the coaching staff. I think there's too much talent on the Jags to be having these mediocre seasons like this. I think something's definitely got to be changed there, because I won't put this all on the players for sure.
Yeah, one more loss and I'll be talking about the draft. So hopefully that Rams pick ends up being good. Hopefully they keep losing. But so you can see some of the other scores here and results. I guess Atlanta, that was a big upset. They just demolished Carolina. Like, where was this Atlanta team in the beginning of the season? Like, they've kind of came out of nowhere the past 2 weeks, beating quality teams on the road in their division. So I think they almost played like spoiler for Carolina, though, because that NFC is so tough to make the playoffs in. Carolina was above 500, but it's looking like Carolina's not going to make the playoffs now. Sorry to all my Panthers fans listening out to this, but I think it's going to be too tough. I think New Orleans has got the division. And then when you look at the wild cards, it's either going to be San Francisco / Seattle, whichever team doesn't win that division, and then probably Minnesota, I think, makes the playoffs. I think it's going to be tough for Carolina to make it. And it's interesting because it seems like Cam Newton's all but for sure gone, but I mean, Kyle Allen had a bad game, so who knows if maybe Cam's back in Carolina. Like, maybe that was just premature, but Kyle Allen's had a couple of bad games now, so he's came back down to earth. I wonder if they're believing in him, or if they're just gonna want to maybe draft a quarterback, or see what Will Greer's got. I mean, that's a really interesting situation there for the Panthers. Buffalo, they took care of business. Dallas, they won a game they were supposed to. I predicted an upset here, but it didn't happen. Minnesota, they had a huge comeback against Denver to win 27-23. New Orleans won as expected. The Jets won as expected. I picked Washington just because I mean, the Jets are the Jets. Like, I thought, like, but yeah, they won. Ever since they lost to Miami, I was like, yeah, the Jets are going to lose to everybody else. But credit them, they've won 2 in a row now. Baltimore and Houston. Baltimore won this. I didn't expect it to be this big of a win for them. And so now we'll start talking about the AFC playoffs.
I think Baltimore's the team to beat, Nate. I know you're probably going to say it's New England, but
No, it's
this Ravens team has now beaten New England pretty convincingly. I mean, that
Yeah.
was like a 2-score game. And then this game, 41-7. I mean, it's not just all about their offense like that people talk about. The defense is coming up big too. And this Texans team had been on a roll lately. This was a quality win for Baltimore. I gotta say, I think they're the team to beat right now. New England's got a slightly better record, but look at also some stuff Baltimore's done. They've gone to Seattle and won. That's pretty tough to do. Their losses, I guess they lost to the Browns. That was kind of a weird thing that happened. And then who was their other loss? Do you remember? Kansas City, I want to say. But it was on the road at Kansas City. Yeah,
early in the season it was, I think. They've been on a roll lately.
yeah. So I think Baltimore's a team to beat. It'll be interesting to see if they do get the home field advantage for the playoffs. That's going to be big. They've got the tiebreaker on New England, so if New England drops one more, Baltimore would get that, assuming they win out. But yeah, I mean, I gotta say this Baltimore team looks legit. I mean, I would probably have to put them in the Super Bowl right now. Kansas City's they've really died off lately. Nobody seems to be scared of them anymore. That AFC West is just kind of weird. Oakland's right on their doorstep, so as crazy as it is, Oakland might end up winning that division. Obviously, New England's a threat as always. But then looking at some other teams, I actually think the Colts. I'm going to put them above Houston for now, just because of what we saw from this past week. I know that they lost to Miami, but from what the Colts did this week versus what Houston did, I got to put the Colts, I guess it's the third team. And then I'll put Kansas City 4, Oakland 5. And then even though Buffalo's got a better record, I'll put Buffalo 6 just because they really haven't beaten anybody this year. They've had a really easy schedule. And I don't trust Josh Allen. They've got a really good defense, but I don't trust Josh Allen. So I think the Bills make the playoffs, but I don't think they win their first game because just because of the quarterback playing the offense. But I mean, they probably won't make the playoffs since they have such an easy schedule. So that's my, I guess, rankings for the AFC. I wonder if yours are similar. You have New England on top, or?
No, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, I gotta go with you. I think just on paper, I think Baltimore is the team to beat because they have beaten the Pats, the Seahawks, and the Texans all pretty convincingly in the last month. I do think Belichick tends to be better when he gets the opportunity to see a team twice in a season. I don't think I don't think the Pats will come out if they meet up with the Ravens again in the playoffs and make the same mistakes that they did last time, at least not to the same extent. I think it'll be at least a competitive game, especially if they get it, if they get the chance to have it played in New England. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to Baltimore and New England for the top seed in the AFC. And I think like what you were saying with the tiebreaker, I would give the edge to Baltimore on paper right now as the 1 seed, and then New England 2. I think the Colts. I agree with you. I think the Colts are going to win their division, the AFC South, just because I think the Texans, Deshaun Watson is obviously amazing, but I don't think they're going to. I don't think they have enough in the tank to win the division as a team, especially with the injury to J.J. Watt a couple weeks ago. All that, especially the way they got destroyed today versus the Ravens. And then I think the West. I think that's gonna be interesting. I think Kansas City will still make it because I think they will beat the Raiders next time they play. But yeah, I think they could get upset first round. For sure that wouldn't be all too surprising to me. And then wild cards, I think. 'Cause, 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 That's a little bit trickier, but I think
Yeah, it is pretty jumbled right now.
yeah, there's a lot of teams still in the running for it, but I think the Raiders have a good shot with the way the rest of their schedule works. Got some pretty winnable games if they can just probably sneak in there. And then I think the Bills are in the same boat. The rest of their schedule doesn't look too difficult. I think they play the Pats one more time, if I'm not mistaken.
They
So
do.
it's probably
Yeah.
so that'll be one more loss, I'd assume, but the rest of it's pretty winnable. So I think I'd put them as my 6th seed also.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
The Bills, I think, might actually have the 5th seed, but I just don't
that's
see them winning the playoff game against whoever it's going to be. Unless
No.
they beat the Patriots, like they haven't lost or they haven't beaten a good team this year.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. But we'll move over to the NFC real quick. To me, I still have San Francisco 1. Even though they lost to Seattle, I've got them 1. I've got New Orleans 2. I've got Minnesota 3. I've got Seattle 4, Green Bay 5, and then Dallas 6. That's obviously not possible for like the playoff standings, but that's my power rankings. I'm just more sold on San Francisco. They had a close win, come from behind against Arizona today, but I mean that's the thing. Teams you got to learn how to win many different styles of winning. Even though Seattle, has a great record, I still just feel like they're too reliant on Russell Wilson. They just don't scare me as much as San Francisco does as a team. And then New Orleans, I've got it 2. Still, just because that loss to Atlanta was pretty inexcusable. They just haven't seemed like the same team. But they had a nice win this week. And then I've got Minnesota 3 for how they've been playing lately. I think they've definitely been playing really well. I think they still can win the NFC North. And then I've got Seattle at 4. And then I really just don't think the Packers are going to – I just don't think – I really think the Packers are overrated, to be honest with you. And it comes down to Aaron Rodgers. I think he's really been overrated this year. So I've got the Packers at 5. And then Cowboys at 6, but I don't give them a realistic shot. Them and the Eagles. It's like whoever wins that division, yay, congratulations, first round playoff exit. Like that's what it's going to be. That division's really weak. Those teams also feast on easy schedules. So whoever it ends up being, they're gonna be dropped in the first round. Sorry if you're a fan of those teams, but that's the way I see it. I don't think the Rams or the Bears. This is a must-win game for them right now, but I just don't think either of them can make up the ground. I don't think Carolina can make up the ground. Detroit, unfortunately for them, I don't think they can make up the ground, especially with Stafford now being gone for a numerous amount of time. So that's my power rankings there for the NFC. Curious to see if Nate's different or not.
So we're doing power rankings, not playoff picks, then, right?
Yeah, I
Just
guess
power rankings.
power rankings.
Yeah, I would. Mine are gonna be a little bit different in that I think I'm gonna go with Seattle as my number 1 team. Just because I think the Niners have been impressive this year, but they lost to the Seahawks last Monday, and the game today, that win versus the Chargers was not very satisfying. I mean, not the Chargers, sorry, the Cardinals. They let them put up a lot of points and barely came back to win at the end. I think if they lost that game, there'd be a lot more talk about them being a pretender. Which to me, like, just because you whether you win or lose, it's all about like how you looked, and they didn't look that great today. So even with that win, I'm not giving them a whole lot of credit. So I think the Seahawks. There's definitely some concerns about Russell Wilson having to do too much, but I think with the way Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf have come on this year, I think he's got a lot better receivers than I thought he did coming into this year. The O-line's played a little bit better. As long as they can be competent, I think they can move the ball pretty well. And their defense, not a whole lot of big name stars other than Clowney and Bobby Wagner, but I think they've, from what I've seen, the games I've been able to watch of the Seahawks, they've looked pretty competent as well, at least good enough to keep them in most games. So I'm going to have to go with Seattle number 1, and I think they will win the NFC West this year. I think they'll beat the Niners in their second matchup. So they're my number 1 seed. Number 2, I think, if it's power rankings, I think, I'm looking at the standings here. I've been going back and forth. I think the Saints would be my number 2 seed, or number 2. Sorry, I keep saying that. Number 2 best team with Drew Brees back. I think they're still the most complete team roster-wise. So I think Brees coming back is going to give them the huge boost. I think Kamara is going to start putting up the huge stats that a lot of fantasy owners were expecting this year. Number 3, that's where I would put the Niners. I think they're still a very talented team, just not. I don't think they're Super Bowl bound. Maybe, and that's a little bit premature. So I put them at 3. I put the Vikings at 4. I'm with you on this one, Zach. I think the Packers are a little bit overrated. They haven't really beaten any. I'm trying to go through their schedule in my head now. I don't think they've beaten anyone that was too big of a statement, and they've lost a couple games that looked pretty ugly.
They beat Minnesota head-to-head, but yeah.
That is true.
That was a while ago.
Yeah, I think the way they've looked recently, I think I'm going to give the edge to the Vikings in that department. And then I would put the Packers. I'll put them 5th after.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, they would be 5th in your rankings.
Yeah, they'd be
got
5th.
Minnesota 4. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they'd be 5th, and then I think the Cowboys 6th is pretty fair. I can see them making the playoffs. Like you said, it's a weak division, but their offense to me has looked a lot better this year. I give Dak a lot of credit. I didn't think he was that good coming into the year, but he's looked a little bit more impressive. They're starting to get rolling now, so I think they'll definitely win that division. And I think they can. They've got the talent to win a game in the playoffs, depending on the matchup, obviously. But yeah, that's my top 6 right now.
Yeah, the only reason I don't think they'll make the playoffs or they'll win a playoff game is because they're either going to have to play either San Francisco or Seattle, either one of those teams. Whatever team doesn't win that, either them or Minnesota/Green Bay. Whatever team doesn't win that division will be a wild card and probably have a better record than them. They'll get the home field for winning their division, but still, I think all those teams are better. So that's why I don't see them winning a playoff game. But I guess they could. It's not like I wouldn't bet my life on that. But it's just how I feel right now, unless they change that. But that's gonna wrap up today's episode, guys. Hope you had a good time listening. Talked power rankings, talked Myles Garret, talked college football playoff and Tua. So got a lot of different things there to make the title about. I don't know what I'm going to make it the title of this episode, but we'll see. Thanks to everybody for checking in. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
See ya.
For Eric, peace.